Hey, what's going on? It's Brad here from gigapress.net, and this video is part of the WordPress Masterclass, which is my full-length video course for WordPress beginners. If you find it helpful and you want to sign up for the full course, you can do so by clicking the link in the description below. So here we are in the WordPress content editor, and as I mentioned, this editor has a lot in common with any other text editor, but the primary distinction is that WordPress content is based around blocks. Blocks are individual chunks of content that have various properties and attributes associated with them. So I think the best way to demonstrate this is just to start creating something. So I'm going to enter a title for this blog post. And as you click down into the main content area, you can enter some text here. And you'll notice this area behaves very much like any other editor. So you've got a paragraph, you can add some text formatting, you can add a link. There are various other formatting options here. And then when you press enter or return, you're going to drop down into another paragraph exactly as you would expect. But these paragraphs are actually blocks. So paragraph just happens to be the type of block that this is. If you want to add a different type of block, you can click the plus icon over here and make a selection from the list. So you see we have paragraph, we have heading, image, gallery, list, and quote. And these are just a few options. These are sort of the most frequently used options. But paragraph is the default because that's what you're going to use the most as you're entering text. But let's say we want to add a heading. So what you'll notice initially is that the sidebar over here changed to give you some different options that are applicable to this specific type of block. So you can change the color options, the typography, and then right here you can choose which type of heading you want this to be. So heading 1 all the way down to heading 6. So we're going to stick with heading 2 and just enter an example heading here, very original. Press enter, and again, it's going to create another paragraph block. To make this a little more interesting, I'm going to add some dummy text here, just so we have a larger volume of text. And then below that, we're going to add another type of block. So let's say we want to add an image. So this is an image block. We can choose to upload an image, insert it from the media library, or insert from a URL. So I've already uploaded a couple of images to this site, so I'm going to choose media library, and we'll insert this one. So this is our image. We're going to go with the large size for now. And then once again, you've got a paragraph block below that image ready to go. Now, once again, these options are just some of the most commonly used blocks, but you can click Browse All to open this sidebar and see quite an extensive list of options that you have available. So if you hover your mouse over them, it gives you a little preview to show you what each block is going to look like. So we've got a quote, list, which is basically your simple bullet list or numbered list. You can insert code. You can add a table. Of course, we've got image, image gallery. You can add audio, downloadable files, video. You can do a cover where you have a text overlay over top of an image or video. And then down here, you've got various design elements that you can use to organize and structure your content. And you can see the list just goes on and on. There are a lot of different options for blocks, and it allows you to create unique content that's visually compelling without having to write any code or do any difficult formatting. So we'll add a list here. And you can see this behaves very predictably. As you press enter, you're going to get another list item. Press it again, you'll jump down into another paragraph block. And again, as you're editing each of these blocks, you will notice that the sidebar changes to give you options that are specific to that type of block. So when we click on the image block, we can change the image size. We can style it a little bit differently. We can change the specific dimensions here. We can add a border. All of these options that are specific to this type of content. Another interesting thing that I want to mention, when you go to Browse All and you open up this block sidebar, you can choose a pattern, which is sort of a pre-configured collection of blocks that allows you to create something really beautiful without having to configure all the individual blocks from scratch. So you can see we've got like layered images here. We have a wide image with introduction and buttons, a large list of names, video with header and details, list of events, and these are all pre-formatted with colors and everything that match your theme. So you can just insert these very easily and then customize them for your individual needs. So let me insert one of these. Let's do the pricing table. So you can see with one click, I've created this beautiful pricing table that I did not have to configure at all. But if you look a little closer, you're going to notice that these are individual blocks. I could have created this individually, but it just makes it so much easier to take a pre-existing pattern and customize it. So this is a collection of columns, which is a block in itself. And then within that, we have more blocks. We have one column here, the heading at the top, a paragraph block, a separator, which is this line here. We have a list, and then we have a button. And then we just duplicate that across 3 separate columns. And it looks really beautiful, and it's something you created in a couple of clicks without having to do any coding or difficult formatting. It's so easy. By the way, this menu that I'm looking at over here, you can bring this up with this icon to sort of navigate through the blocks in your post. So not the most interesting content, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do with this editor. So I would encourage you to go ahead and open up a new post and just start creating some stuff, whether it's something you're actually going to use on your website or just some random filler content to get accustomed to using this editor. For most websites, images are a very important content element. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the process of uploading and working with images in the WordPress content editor. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of this post I created in the previous video, and I'm going to insert an image block here. So as we saw before, we can upload an image, we can add an image from the media library, or we can insert from a URL. This time I'm going to upload an image. So I'm actually just going to drag an image file in, and you see when I drop it, it will start uploading. And once the upload is complete, I will see my image in my post. So what's the next step? Well, it depends on how you want to display this image on your website. There are a variety of tools and options that you can use to customize how your images show up. So to give you an example, in this little bar here, we have the option to add a filter to the image just to display it in a slightly more artistic way. I don't think this is necessarily the best looking option with a food photo, but if we go up to this photo that I added earlier and we click Apply Duotone Filter, we can see that it has some pretty cool effects. So we'll stick with that for now, come back down to this image, and we'll look at the other options that we have available here. We can change the alignment of the image. We can insert a link. We can crop the image, or we can add text over the image. So let's actually do that first. If we want to add some text here, we're just going to say tacos. Again, very original. And then we can set the color for the text over here in the sidebar. We'll go with white. This isn't that interesting, but if you had a headline or something that you wanted to add here on top of an image, you could definitely do that. So I'm going to undo that so we can go back and work with the image again. Once again, we can crop. If you want to apply a crop to your image, you can do that and then click apply. I'm going to cancel. Something I often find myself doing is inserting an image and then aligning it to the left or the right so that my text will wrap around the image. That way it doesn't take up that much screen real estate with just the image itself. So the way I typically do that is I'll set the image size to thumbnail or medium. In this case, I think I'll go medium. And then you notice the image is still just sort of its own standalone thing. So if I add some text here, we'll do some more dummy text in this section. Divide this into a couple of paragraphs. And we'll move this image up. So again, the image is very much a standalone thing here, and it looks a little bit awkward being aligned over to the left side at this particular size. So I am going to change the alignment to align right. When we do that, you can see that the blocks that follow the image block will then automatically wrap around the image itself. So it's a great way to add some visuals, some illustration to your content without it taking up so much space. Now, looking at these other alignments here, you'll see that the default is none. So none is not really going to have any particular location. It'll typically be off to the left, but it's different from align left, which is where the text will wrap around it to the right side. You can also align center to center the image on the page, and you can do full width if you want the image to be really big. But now you notice that the image is kind of pixelated, and that's because I'm still using the medium size, and the medium size has then been scaled up, which makes the image kind of look like garbage. So if we go full size, you'll see that it is crystal clear. So that's how I typically handle alignment. I will usually center the image if it's just a standalone thing, or if I want it to be more decorative, I will align it to the right or left side and scale it down to a smaller size. And then depending on your theme, you may have some different styling options. For example, here we have the option to show a rounded image. I think the default looks better in this case. But yeah, I just wanted to look a little bit closer at the process of working with images, because images are a very core part of most websites, and you're going to be working with them a lot. I want to show you a few ways to arrange and organize your blocks within your WordPress content. So you remember, each of these individual pieces of content is a block. So we've got a heading block, a paragraph block, and an image block. And if you want to move these around, say we want to move this image up, you can do so using these little arrow icons. So when you select the block, this menu comes up. You can click on these arrows, and you can see the block easily moves right around the post, shifting the next block down below it. Alternatively, if you don't want to use these arrows, or if you need to move the block across the entire post, for example, you can drag and drop for a very simple sort of visual way of moving the block around. You can even drag it within a column. So if we wanted that image to be there, and if we want to drag it back out, we can drag it here, for example. So you can see just how easy it is to move your blocks around once you've created them. I think this is a much better system than the sort of classic way that you would do that in a normal text editor or other website building services, where you may have to like delete a bunch of text, copy and paste it to somewhere else, and so on and so forth. Here you can just move it around very easily, and you can even do that in the list view over here. If you want to grab the image and then just move it down to here, for example, you'll see it moved down to that position. So for now, we'll just leave this here. Now, in terms of arranging your blocks, Columns are a very common way to do that. And you can see we have a column arrangement here for this pricing table, although we did create this sort of automatically using a pattern earlier. So I want to show you what that looks like when you go to create a row of columns manually. So you can click the plus icon to add a new block, and I'm going to click columns. If columns does not show up in this menu here, remember you can click browse all and then scroll down to the design section and click columns right here. So when you bring up the columns block, you have several options for how you'd like to arrange your columns. In this case, I'm going to do a simple 50-50 split, but of course you can do any ratio that you prefer. So we're going to do a 50-50. And you see we have two empty columns where we can go ahead and insert a block. So I'm going to create like a simple pros and cons list. Like if I were creating a product review or something like that, we're going to do pros and cons. So I'm going to insert a heading. We'll say pros. And then on this one, we'll do the same thing with cons. Now from here, we can hit return and it'll create a paragraph block right there within your column. Now let's say we want to make a list of pros and cons, right? So we'll click the button to create a new block. We'll select list, and then we'll just add some list items here. Same thing on this side, return, and let's say we want to copy and paste these items right over to here. We'll paste it into this paragraph block, and you'll notice there are no bullet points here, because this is still a paragraph block. But you can actually convert a paragraph to a list block by clicking on the paragraph icon here and selecting list. So that block has been transformed into a list, and you can see we have our 4 list items there. So those are our 2 columns, and if you click down below, you can add another block below that row of columns. Now, if we want to make this a little more interesting, because of course, this row of columns is a lot more visually compelling than this row, you can click into one of your columns here. And actually, I'm going to use the list view to select columns. Actually, we'll go to the individual column. And then over here, you have some options for, say, a background. If you want to choose one of these, can go with that. And then to make this a little more aesthetic, we can add padding. So you can see in these columns, there's a little bit of space between the actual content and the border of the column. Here we're kind of stretching out right to the border itself. So if we add some padding, say 20 pixels, you'll see that we have a little bit of a gap. And you can set that to whatever you want. You could do 30. And you can kind of see how that responds. You can also change the text color to whatever you want. I think I'm just going to keep the default here. And then if we want to edit this other column, we can add another background to this one. Same thing. I think we did 30 pixels on the first one. And you can see how that starts to look a little more like this. One more thing I want to share in terms of organizing your content is that you can actually group multiple blocks together so that they behave as a cohesive unit. So let's say we want all of these paragraphs as well as this image to sort of be its own thing. So what we can do, if we click into this block here, we're going to select the image block and then the 3 paragraphs. And I'm just holding my shift key as I click on each of these. So now we've selected all of these, and we can click this little icon right here with the 3 dots, and then we can select group. So now you see this has become a group, which is sort of its own object within the list of blocks. So then you can take this group and move it around as if it were a single block. You can drag and drop, and it just makes life a lot easier as you're moving things around the page. So those are a few tips for arranging and organizing your content in WordPress. Thanks for checking out this video. As I mentioned at the top, this video is part of my WordPress masterclass, which I've designed to be the definitive beginner's guide to building beautiful, functional websites with WordPress. It's a comprehensive step-by-step course, and the goal is to get you to a level of proficiency where you feel comfortable building pretty much any type of website, from a simple blog to a complex e-commerce store, all without writing a single line of code. If you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for more WordPress content.